Hi everyone. Do you know who I am? Who am I?
Kennedy's mom.
I am Kennedy's mom. I'm so glad to be here with you guys in Miss Lemon's pre-K class. And I'm going to tell you a story today. And it's a story about a prince. And this is called The Rooster Prince of Breslov. Have you ever heard this story?
No.
Well, this is actually a Jewish story from Jewish culture, which my mom's family is a Jewish family. And so this is a story that has been passed on for 200 years. That's a long time, right? So they would tell it to their children, and when their children would grow up, they'd tell it to their children, and would just pass on and pass on. And this story, like lots of stories in the Jewish culture, you're going to see it talks a lot about kindness and wisdom, and those are things that they really value. So we're going to get started on this story. You do? Good. All right. Here we go. Are you ready? Okay. Once upon a time, there was a prince, and this prince had everything he could ever want and more. And the more was the problem, because he was getting so tired of it. If he just wanted a piece of bread, instead of bringing a piece of bread, they would bring in a whole cake covered with honey. He'd keep saying, I just want bread. And if he looked too long at something, if he saw something beautiful, like a pony, and it was so beautiful, if he looked at it too long, someone would wrap it up and put a bow on it and bring it to him. Or if he saw a bird's nest up in a tree, if he would look at it, if he was just looking at it too long, someone would pull it out of the tree and try to give it to him. He was just getting so tired of this, and one day this was happening, and he looked over and he saw a rooster. And the rooster just looked so happy. It was just so happy, and its life was so good. So he said, you know what? Enough. And then he did something very, very funny. Do you know what he did?
What?
He did this. He ripped off his clothes and he put his arms up like wings. Can you put your arms up like wings? And he started flapping them. And then he did something really silly. He started clucking. He went, bark, 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 bark. Can you do that? And then he did the worst thing of all. He started to crow. He went, this was silly, but he didn't stop doing it. He did this for weeks and weeks, and he stopped speaking any human talk. He would only cluck, and he would only crow, and he stopped eating human food. He would only eat corn, and he would only eat it if they threw it on the ground, and he would peck the ground. Peck, 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 peck. Isn't that silly?
Yeah.
The king and queen were beside themselves. So his parents, the king and queen, they couldn't get him to stop, and so they decided they would offer a bag full of gold to anyone who could cure their rooster son. So they brought in doctors, and the doctors tried to fix him. And know what he did to the doctors?
What?
He started pecking at their feet. Peck, 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 peck. And the doctors just ran away, and they couldn't fix him. And they brought in magicians to try to do a magic spell to make him stop being a rooster. And know what he did?
What?
He pecked at his feet, peck, 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 and the magician ran away. So the king and queen were just so sad because they couldn't find a way to make him stop being a rooster. One day, an old man came to the king and queen, and he said to them, he said, I can find a way to fix your son. And they said, oh, good. Can you make him be back just like he was before? And he said, well, maybe not exactly like he was before, but he will be a good prince. So they said, sure, come on in. We will take any help we can get. So the old man came into the room where the prince was flapping his wings. Can you flap your wings? Flapping his wings. And he was clucking. And worst of all, he was crowing. And so do you know what that old man did?
What?
He took off his hat, and this is the silliest part of all, he took off his clothes, and he put his arms up, and he started flapping his wings. Flap your wings. And he started clucking, and worst of all, he started to crow. And do you know what this prince did? He looked at him, and he said, what are you doing? Which is important. Remember, he hasn't spoken any human talk in weeks. He said, what are you doing? And the old man said, oh, I'm just flapping, and I'm clucking, and I'm crowing. And he said, why would you do that? And he said, Well, because I'm a rooster just like you, obviously. And the prince looked at him, and then he shrugged, and then they just went on with their day. The whole day, all they did was flap and cluck and crow and peck, 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 eat the corn off the ground. And that night, they went to sleep on the cold, hard ground. The next morning, the prince woke up, and he saw the old man was laying on the floor, and he was old, and so laying on a floor, is that very comfortable? No, and you could tell his back was hurting. He was rubbing his back. He was trying to stretch. Ugh, it was a really hard night for an old man to sleep on the floor, and the prince was feeling pretty bad for him. So after a little bit, they went on with their day. They flapped, they clucked, they crowed. When it was getting closer to nighttime, two things were brought into the room. Now, who do you think had these things brought into the room?
Beds.
Who do you think? They are beds. Who do you think asked for them to be brought in? The old man. He had a plan, but the prince didn't know this. So the old man looked over and he said, "Oh, what are those?" And the prince said, "Oh, those are beds." And the old man said, "Bark, bark, beds? What? What's a bed?" And he said, "Bark, bark, bark. A bed is something that humans use for comfort when they sleep, so they don't have to sleep on the cold, hard floor." And the old man said, "Oh man, those humans, they get everything nice. We roosters don't get anything." And the prince said, "You know, I don't see any reason why a nice old man like you, old rooster like you, shouldn't get to sleep on a bed." And the old man said, "Well, that's very kind of you." And he went and he lay down on the bed. And that night, when he went to sleep, the next morning he woke up and saw two things. He saw the prince had also laid on the other bed. And then there was something else that he saw. Sitting over on the side, there was this. And it smelled. Everyone sniffed. Oh, they could smell it. And the old man, who do you think had that brought in? The old man, it was part of his plan.
It was good.
He said, "What is that wonderful smell?" And the prince said, "Bark, bark, that's bark, bark, bread." And the old man said, "Bread? What is bread?" And he said, "Oh, that's something that humans eat. It's something that's delicious, and they serve it when it's warm, and they put butter on it." And the old man said, "Again with the humans, they get everything wonderful, and we roosters don't get anything except this corn on the ground." And the prince looked at him, and he could tell the old man was very hungry. And right then, his tummy started to grumble. Does your tummy ever grumble when you're hungry?
Oh, yeah.
He was so hungry. And the prince said, "You know what? I don't see any reason why a nice old rooster like you shouldn't get to eat some bread too." And he said, "That is very kind of you." And so he started to eat. And pretty soon, the prince joined him, and they both ate the bread together, and they had a wonderful day. They went with the rest of their day flapping their wings. Can you clap? And they clucked. And worst of all, they crowed. And so they went on with their day. That night, they laid down on their beds again, but someone had left the windows open. Who do you think left the windows open? Oh man, it was part of his plan. He left it open, and the room was freezing cold, and they were shivering and shaking. And the prince looked, and he could tell the old man was very, very cold, and he felt bad for him. The old man said, "What do humans do when they're cold to get warm?" And the prince said, "Bark, bark. They put their clothes on, I think." And he said, "Oh, those humans, they get everything so nice." And the prince felt so bad for him. He said, No, I'm going to go get you some clothes. Wait right here." And he ran, and he found the old man's clothes, and he helped him put them back on. Oh, that's better. Oh, are you feeling warmer already? And then the prince was very cold too, so he decided he should probably go ahead and put his on too.
And his hat? The old man's hat?
Well, he doesn't need his hat right now.
Wait, is that
He
stick
might put
on?
it on it a little bit. So,
Does that stick on?
so they had their warm clothes, and they went on the rest of their day with their clothes on, but they still flapped their wings. Flap their wings. And they still clapped. And worst of all, they still crowed. But that night, they looked over, and something was brought into the room. Do you see this? Wow, do you see that? Who do you think brought this in?
The old man.
The old man. And the old man looked at it and he said, "What is that?" And the prince said, "Oh, that is a Sabbath feast." And the old man said, "What is a Sabbath feast?" And the prince said, "Oh, it's what humans do every day on the Sabbath. They eat the challah bread, they drink the wine, they eat the stew, they light candles." The old man looked at it and his tummy grumbled again and he said, "Again with the humans. They get everything good and we roosters get nothing." And the prince looked at him and said, "You know, I see no reason why a nice old rooster like you shouldn't get to have a Sabbath meal too." He said, "That is very kind of you." And so they sat down together at the table and they ate the challah bread and they drank the wine and they ate the stew and they lit the candles and said a blessing and they had a wonderful meal together. And while they were sitting there, his clothes are kind of falling off him. Ooh, there we go, that's better. While they were sitting there across the table from each other, the old man looked over at the prince and he said, "You know, with those clothes on, you kind of look like a human. You kind of look like a man. And you know what? You actually look exactly like the prince." And the prince said, "Whoa, whoa, whoa. Wait. I am not. No. Let's see here. Just because I laid on a bed and I ate some bread and I put clothes on and I had a Sabbath meal, that does not make me a man." And the old man smiled and he said, "You are right. What made you a man is the fact that you were so kind to a nice old rooster and you always looked after him first." And then the old man put on his hat and he said goodbye and he left the room. And the prince sat there for a minute and he thought about it. And he thought about it and he decided, "You're right, I am a man today." And he went out and he became the prince again. And when he was older, he was the king and he ruled his kingdom very well. The end. Did you like that story?
Yeah.